So it's Friday. It's you hangout time. So today I'm joined by my good friend Pete Duncanson. How you doing, Pete?
I'm doing all right, mate. Got a bit of a cold, so I might sound a bit funny.
You
Uh,
sound no different than you normally do.
I'm normally hungover when you speak to me.
That's probably right.
I sound the same.
So obviously we've just had CodeGarden, and we was just discussing that maybe we should just have a bit of a catch up and have a good old bit of chin wag and have a discussion about a few things that's been going on. So
Absolutely. It's lovely to be on for one. You're like now Mr. Umbraco TV, so
thank you.
Parkinson, but for the people.
Yeah, well, maybe I'm not as old as Parky, but not quite yet.
New blood, mate. New blood.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that we put in our notes, and I know you wanted to get this probably over and out the way first. Obviously, you went over to US Fest. What was it? March, April time? Was it?
Yeah.
Was it around that? Around that time. So obviously you was due to go over and have a discussion or chat about Code First and why it's cool and why you should use it. But obviously, when you actually had turned up to US Fest, obviously you told the attendees a different story, that maybe Code First is not the way forward.
I thought that was yeah. When I first announced it, I wrote a blog post a while back about the state of Code First and where we're at. And at the time, a guy called Lars who'd written, I forgot what it's actually called now, Umbraco CodeGen or something, which was his idea to use using files to generate classes, and then you could crank the handle backwards and do it that way. I thought, well, that's quite an exciting option. So I was kind of going to do that post live, but then as things moved on and we did another project trying to do Code First, and it was just a nightmare, to be honest. And it got so big, and I'm not saying all sites are doomed to failure if you do Code First, but when we got to another problem, it got in the way of our workflow, and that to me means it's broken. We were chasing best practice rather than actually working practice, and that's when I thought doesn't quite work. Had a long thing, talked to usual confidence in the Umbraco world about it, and I just decided this is madness. I'm tired of people tapping me up saying, "Hey, you do that U-side builder."
Yeah, so you obviously got quickly quite associated or well known for being Mr. U-site builder. How did that even come about? Just that you've done a project and then all of a sudden you're Mr. U-site builder overnight?
I looked into it. I mean, my background with MVC and CodeFirst comes from Ruby on Rails, which got into about 8 years ago now, longer. And I enjoyed how that worked. It's just I'm a Windows boy up through and through, and I can do Ruby on Rails until it gets to deployment time, and then I'm scuppered. It's just totally fumbling around in the dark, and that bit let me down a little bit. So I backed away from it and went back to .NET after a little venture into it. But I did really enjoy what I did there, and so my keenness to do code came from I suppose what you could do in Rails to build your models up and push stuff into the database. So that seemed like the right thing to do. So when U-Type Builder was around, we jumped on it and had a play with it, really quite liked it. And again, I always say this, it is a fantastic piece of kit for doing what it does. It was just scuppered a bit when Umbraco changed. Because it was so complicated, it was too much effort to try and get it up to V6, unfortunately, so it's sort of stuck in V4. And I gave one talk on it about it in UK Fest, I think it was. The second UK Fest I talked about.
I vaguely remember.
And I just said, try it out. It's a nice thing to have a go with. This is what you do. This is how it works. And have a go. And after that, I was Mr. U-Site Builder.
So ever since.
That sort of stuff.
So is the reason why that you potentially don't like the approach or the model is generally around the workflow side of things, in terms of doing everything in code first and then having to make a tweak and change to a property, or something's changed because specs change from the client and then you have to recompile everything, or what's the number one gripe?
There's two. There's performance and then there's workflow. Workflow is probably the biggest one for me. Code first is meant to, anything we do, the way we do it, the method we do it, is only to get to the end result, which is to make a website that sells something, promotes something for a client. Anything else along the way is just steps on how we get there. And sometimes we get confused with actually the tools have become far more important to us than the end result, and that's one of the dangers. And the workflow has to be fast, has to be efficient, it has to be easily repeatable and easy for someone else to pick up and follow. And I find the workflow with the CodeFirst in Umbraco, CodeFirst can still work, don't get me wrong, but with Umbraco it just doesn't quite make enough sense because the whole thing's been built around that UI and the way that the database is all separate and normalized out, so allowing it to do the magic it does to create various doc types, etc. It just doesn't work. You have to put too many layers of abstraction to try and beat it into shape to be something it's not really meant to do. And then if anything goes wrong with any of those layers of abstraction, you're in a whole world of pain. And so, like the example I always give is, if you've got your description for a doc type, for instance, and you put a typo in it, the lengths you have to go to create that typo are insane, as opposed to just go to the UI, change it, press and save. It's not saving you any time at all. It saves you initial bit of time initially when you first start a project and you work in Visual Studio and trying to get it all set up, but very quickly it's becoming a big bag of spanners that you drag around as opposed to an amazing toolbox that helps you do everything. And
yeah, of course.
You get to a point where you think the sooner I can throw this thing away, the better. And then that's not the point. And we've done enough of them now, and of certain sizes that we've learned to just back away from it. It's adding too much complication to what ought to be a very simple thing, really. We make websites, shouldn't be that hard.
Yeah, exactly. I think everyone's probably got suckered into the golden dream of, we can version control or source control our document types and the structure and things like that. I think that's what everyone seems to kind of get really excited about, or the number one thing. And obviously most of us are developers who use Umbraco and live in Visual Studio. So the idea of not having to use the UI seems appealing at first, but like you say, the workflow is just not right.
There's a great quote from Mr. Douglas Robar, which I dropped quite a lot, which was he gave to me on the plane. So when we're flying out to Vegas, drinking champagne and drinking Baileys on tap, it was ace.
Oh, lovely, as you do.
As you do. Sat next to lovely Mr. Robar, and we were discussing it because I was uncomfortable about having to stand up in front of what was deemed to be anything up to 200 American guys and say, "Hey, you can't do it; it's all wrong," But my talk was titled "How to Do It," and it's great.
Yeah.
So that was a little bit. So we had a good hour of talking about how we might do that, and he said, "Well, if the back-end doc type editor didn't exist, someone would write it, and it would get more karma than anything Matt Brailsford may put together." One, because everyone would go, "Why has this not been built before? This should be in core," Because it's just a great bit of kit, because it's the right way to do it. I mean, as Windows boys, and it's a broad brushstroke kind of thing, we like point and click. That's why we use Windows and not Linux. We don't like dropping down a dash. I don't like going chmod. I like to, I like to actually right click and security. And
maybe that's my next package. We'll just create a command line for everything.
Chmod.net.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what we like doing. I think it's broad brushstrokes. We're different developers. We can work in command line, no problem. But it just doesn't make any sense for what we're building. We're not making something that NASA's going to run off, unless you're that Red Bull site. But we're just making websites. It shouldn't be this difficult to put all these layers of complexity on for the sake of complexity. And the promised land of the returns that we were promised just didn't come. In fact, it just brought lots of pestilence and disease and swarms of locusts with it, which
never mind. But obviously, maybe at this year's CodeGarden we had a demo from obviously our lovely Frenchman Stefan with the model builder. Did you get a chance to see that demo or that talk? Ooh la la!
I didn't.
What?
I did 2 talks at CodeGarden this
year.
Yeah,
you did 2, didn't you?
Both of them clashed with the 2 talks I wanted to watch more, most of them ever. And Stefan's was one of them, sadly. And the night before at the pre-meetup drinks, I talked to Tim and Geisley, it might be you as well actually, and they said, "Oh, wait till you see what Stefan's done, it's amazing." And he's talking tomorrow, I thought his talk was about front-end fundamentals in the core or something, not how I've completely set it up, mapping models and strongly typed models and things. So I was a bit gutted about that, trying to get a last-minute change.
Change. That's a shame.
Anyone do swapsies?
Yeah. Spuds in. So you've not even had a chance to catch up on the video online then and see what he's managed to do just yet?
I got 10 minutes in yesterday after someone...
a client called.
I think it was Phil Dyke actually tweeted it out and said, finally looking forward to catching up this one. Ooh, so that's the one I missed. Started watching it and then client's called. It's been a busy time since getting back.
Of course. So obviously, just maybe to just fill you in then, obviously Stefan has created a model builder. I don't know, I'm probably not describing it in the best way, but so you still use the kind of the UI to create your document types, and then in Visual Studio you have a link from Visual Studio to your Umbraco installation, and basically say generate me a bunch of C# models, and then you can rerun that and generate those models, and then get your lovely strongly typed models and do whatever you would like to do so. I'm probably not explaining it in the best way, but I think...
You hit the nail on the head there. So it's generating out your strongly typed models as code.
Yeah.
And then you can then import those into your solution and start working off those straight away.
So how would you feel about that approach in terms of the obviously that's kind of the code last or the code generation approach as opposed to the kind of code first? Is it something that you're interested in, or something that you would even take a look at, or have you had enough of strongly typed models that you just want to throw them all in the bin?
I've answered yes to all those.
Okay.
I think it's great. I think it is probably the best solution. I mean, Stefan's knowledge of the core is really, really good. The access he's got to other core members obviously is unprecedented because he's in core.
Yeah.
So I've always said if this solution was ever going to come from anywhere, it's probably going to come from within core if there was a need to do it. I remember Stefan was at the open space that we hosted last year, which I didn't even know was in actually. I think Morgan had to come up and collar me and Shannon from the bar and said, "You two back room now." So
okay.
Come back code first. Oh. So in we went, and he I think he confessed me an email that at that point that's when he realised code first was there's no way it would work. There's too many complications, too many dependencies. But generating out code from what was already in Umbraco, that would be possible. And then it gives you the strongly typed models, which is what a lot of us are liking to use inside our code now, not templates, to make things more readable as best we can. And to encapsulate some of that logic that we have. The example I always give is something along the lines of if you've got a special class that you want to render out in the body or something, rather than have that logic on each of your templates, working out that class every time, you wrap it up somewhere and say, get a template class or whatever it is. And that logic's in one place and it can get used. And it's that sort of encapsulation and ease of readability. I'm a big fan of readability. We have a lot of hasr and isr helper methods on a lot of our stuff. So is visible and has children and all these things. We write all these stupid things, which under the hood, a lot of them just do things like not equal to null.
Yeah, just really basic stuff.
Why have you not got that? Why have you bothered even to do that? And it means when you're reading it, your brain just goes, I know what that is doing, and that does that. And it reads like, not Shakespeare, but it just reads so much.
It's a bit more easier to read and just understand.
We don't do it for everything, but the less CPU cycles in your head you can burn up when you're trying to debug something, I find it better.
Of course.
Fine line between scattering logic all over the shop and trying to write nice readable code for the sake of it. If you get that balance right, you can develop some really nice templates. Back to the point. That's why we want strongly typed models. But one of the things you say, well, are you even into strongly typed models anymore? Well, again, we get back to the workflow issue at the minute. When working with James, who you can't see,
he's sat alongside you
with equally crazy huge headphones on. Sometimes he'll call us over and say, I just need this to I'm trying to get to this field. And I can't let him until I roll over to my machine, open Visual Studio, make the change, do a commit, compile it, throw him over the DLL, he drops him on his machine, he then does a restart, and then he can go change it to C.
Yeah.
Right? And again, I'm like, this workflow doesn't feel right either. That's crazy to ask for something so simple. Like, I've added a checkbox in the back end for this thing that the client's asked, but me as the designer, I can't do it because I don't have Visual Studio, and I'll now need you to stop what you're doing, to add in a 3-liner, compile, pass me over a DLL so that I can say yes.
Yeah, so that workflow between the kind of the developer and the front end designer is still quite a tricky one to kind of nail at the minute, like you say. If you go down the strongly typed route, in terms of that lot of back and forth, in terms of just like you say, adding that extra one-line property, is just that's probably another 30 minutes you've just wasted in your day just to put down your tools to just add in that one property.
Yeah, with the context switching and everything else, booting up the right stuff, doing a pull down, make sure you've got the latest stuff. As James we're working on it for 3 weeks, you might have forgotten about it. You've got to sort of make sure that the work you were on is left in a stable state, and then the phone rings, and then it's lunchtime,
and then half the day's gone.
Yeah, for one text box that just says, voucher code. That doesn't seem right at all. Why does it take 2 of us this long to put a And then the client says the same as well. It's like, sure, this is just a 3-minute job.
Come on.
We don't even bill you for those, right? Because it's just a 3-minute job, and you've got it took 4 hours. So I exaggerate clients if you're listening. So that's one of the troubles of it. And I noticed one of the questions from Lee is, have things got too complicated?
Exactly. How would you answer that then? So obviously, Lee has said, have things got too complicated? Yes, and are we solving the right problems with how we do things in our workflows? I suppose. I presume that's where Lee's getting from.
And I think we are, by our nature as developers, we like to solve problems. When people ask me what do I do, I say I'm a professional problem solver. That's what I like doing. It just happens I do it through code. And all too often we like to solve problems really, really well, and like almost too well. When just a bit of gaffer tape might do. Like to completely rebuild things with machined aluminium and everything else. And are we getting too complicated? I think we are for the vast majority of sites that people are building. One of the troubles we've got with CodeGarden and with a lot of the members who are active in the community is there's very few active community members who are talking to the 90% of the community who are building 5 to 10 page brochure sites, which is probably 90% of what Umbraco is being used for. The ones who are doing all the talking and the blog post writing and telling people this is how you do it are the guys who are writing humongous sites that have to be massively performant and work with really big brand names and have loads of members signing up and all this other stuff. In which the scale's gone from, this many super duper hardcore sites that need lots and lots of this much technical skill to this much is the actual bread and butter sites. And you need like this much complication. Those things don't quite match up, and what we're trying to do is, I think we should be using a lot more simplistic approaches. And one of the things we're toying with, scandalous that we'll say, is throwing away strongly typed potentially for one of our projects and just go back to basics and have a feel and see what we can do. I think there's a lot more that could be done with improving the basic stuff in Umbraco to make some of that stuff so much easier. I mean, James recently rebuilt his personal portfolio site on Umbraco 7. And I was amazed how many times I had to wheel over when he was asking for really, on face of it, a really simple thing. And you're like, that should be really simple. Hang on, let me just show you another way of doing it. And,
there are 101 different ways to do the exact same thing.
Yeah, so because he's a point and click guy as well, so he was in the back end and he was pointing and clicking to add Umbraco fields. He was using Umbraco field button in the back end. Add stuff in. Happy as Larry, and he got most of the stuff up, and he was chugging away and doing loads of stuff. And then he went, right, and now I need to render out for the menu, so I need a loop. We'll go through there, please. And I went, oh yeah, there is an insert loop thing. I have to show you some Razor, so I showed him Razor, and he sort of glazed over instantly. And then, but I gave him the snippet. I said, right, put that somewhere. You've now got that snippet. You can get most of any looping you need to do that. So we did that. And an hour later, he wheeled me over again. And he'd done the loop, but inside the loop he'd then put Umbraco.item, which is, so inside the loop he said, right, I now want to render out the page title of what I'm looping over. And so we'd mixed the two. And it's always do was valid, but all it wrote out was the current page title 5 times as opposed to the page title.
So in the loop.
And it's little bits like that, you kind of slap your head and you kind of go, that shouldn't be that hard, should it?
No, it should be more obvious.
We need a bit more work there, and then you try to add an image, was another classic. I just rendered out 1, 2, 3, 4. So What's that?
Yeah, that's not my picture of my dog. Yeah.
Where's my URL? I was like, oh yeah, you have to use this handy 7 lines worth of razor. In fact, I've got a DLL that does that, and we're back to it. And it's just like,
yeah, of course.
Would it really hurt to just say get image with an ID and it just come out? And so those sort of bits we're starting to, but because we don't do it that way, you don't look at those things. It's only when someone looks at it with fresh eyes you go, hang on.
Yeah.
90% of the people who are using Umbraco are finding this stuff really, really difficult. You know,
I was going to say, the learning curve coming in, and I'm talking when I first picked it up 6, 7, nearly 8 years ago. Obviously, things were different and obviously XSLT based, but yeah, the learning curve from understanding, okay, I can click and point and kind of put in static items for the current page, but as soon as you start to kind of look at anything even a little bit more complicated, it's a steep learning curve in terms of trying to find that balance. And yeah, I still do agree that there's an issue in terms of getting people up to speed who build those smaller sites of 5 to 10 pages or whatever.
I call it the lunchtime effect. You need to be able to get someone to install it in a lunchtime, have a play around, get something up and running, and be enthused about it enough to go, I'm going to play with that tonight when I go home, or I'm going to have a go on that tomorrow lunchtime, or this weekend. I'm going to get some beers in, and I'm going to
sit down,
do some more of this. I'm excited, and I can't say this for 6 so much because I haven't installed 6 up with the installer. I think I've done it twice. That's ridiculous. So I'm not too sure about how that feels now. I know the guys have done a lot of work. I don't want it to make it sound like I'm bashing, but I just mean if we can make that experience so much easier for people coming in fresh, we would get so much more fresh blood. And that sounds crazy because I'm like, you know, people say, hey, aren't you one of the quite big in the Umbraco world? It sounds hilarious. Anyway, but we need fresh blood because that's where fresh ideas come from. I've got a kid now, I'm married, and I've moved to a new house. So my days of coding and weekends and evenings are over. I play jigsaws on the floor. I don't do coding crazy stuff up anymore. So I can't give as much as I used to the community. Some will say I never gave anything. But I can't.
You certainly do, Pete.
I can't code as much as I'd like to anymore, and so we need some fresh blood. I mean, James South, for instance, he's just a coding machine.
Yeah, of course, exactly. But having these new perspectives or these new people come in, like you say, fresh blood, is a totally new perspective in terms of how we should be approaching these things and how we should be kind of approaching these problems. And yeah, I'm getting more excited with version 7 in terms of there's more opportunities for these other type of people in terms of front-enders, in terms of if you know a little bit of JavaScript and HTML and a little bit of Angular, you have the possibility to extend Umbraco, where before if you didn't know how to open Visual Studio and write some C#, then you had no chance of extending Umbraco at all.
Yeah, it's I've got a grumble with Angular. It's not a bad one, don't worry. It's just that it's been pushed a lot as you need to get no Angular if you know JavaScript with Angular. Front enders will be able to do loads of stuff with Angular, which is fine. But it's I agree we can leverage all the goodies that are coming out in it's platform agnostic effectively. So anything that anyone's released that's using JavaScript or anything else, we can potentially leverage into the back end.
Yes.
Umbraco, which is pretty beautifully with this Trevor plugin. On the face of it, got leveraged in a couple of hours, and he's still being developed by Mark very well. And so it was a nice thing, but I don't think there's that many bells and whistles really that we need in the back end. Certainly not enough that everyone needs to know Angular.
No, of course.
If we've got a pool of 20 folk who know Angular, and to be honest, with those 20, if you're in the community, we already know who those 20 are, or certainly approaching those 20. I think those guys are pumping out loads of stuff. I'm not saying everyone be lazy, don't do anything. Learn Angular, it's a fantastic tool to have in the toolbox, but I want to be careful that we're not always push. You must know Angular, it has to be one of the tools in your toolbox or you can't get by.
No, of course, you can definitely get by without having to know it at all. And like you say, there's enough stuff from the community coming out that seems to be quite consistent and quite good quality in terms of extensions or packages or plugins. So yeah, you don't have to, like you say, you don't have to know Angular to get by. It's like you say, it's a nice to have.
And I was worried that CodeGarden this year was going to be all 90% Angular. there was a chunk of it which is fine, but I don't want everyone assuming that you need to know all this stuff before you can't run Umbraco, or you have to know this stuff, or you're not an Umbraco developer. Because I don't agree with those. I think it is a great to have. It's not a requirement.
Yeah, of course. So I think we shall go through some of the other questions. So I'm going to take this one from Morton. Morton Christensen asks, what is your biggest achievement in life next to being the best man at Matt Brailford's, aka the Carminator's, wedding?
Ooh.
So obviously, I don't know if not everyone potentially knows, obviously you and Matt obviously kind of met through the Umbraco community, and then obviously later, years down the line, Matt obviously asked you to then be his best man at your wedding, his wedding even, sorry.
He did. He asked me at our local geek meet that we run, not our programming sessions, as we call them, that we do, or hackathons.
Programming.
Yeah, me and Matt met at Umbraco up north. It was the first one we ever did in Huddersfield. And there was one down in London, and that was about it. And I couldn't be asked to go to London, so I thought, well, I'll put one up up north. And because I was hosting it, I went, I'll do it in my hometown, Huddersfield. We're slap bang in between Leeds and Manchester, so Huddersfield about here, Leeds here, Manchester. So I thought, well, that should be relatively easy to get a lot of people. And lo and behold, we pulled in nine people, most of which I'm still.
Well, on the first meetup.
Yeah.
Wow, that's impressive.
I've ever had. Plummeted after that. Until about, I don't know, meetup number 4, which is just basically me and Matt in the pub, trying to sort out how to source control and backup. And that stayed on for about another 9 meetups. And then eventually we said, well, we'll just meet at the office and bring laptops and we'll order pizza and a beer or two and write something. And that's how we started writing some of the packages that we did. Just coding for coding's sake. Those enjoyable times. We're hoping to get those back again. My boy's now nearly 3. So the long nights and the. So
you've got a few more hours back in the day.
Yeah, I've got a few passages out now, so I might be able to get the odd night out to hopefully do some coding, which should be good. It
fantastic.
Sounds really geeky. I can't wait to stay in the office for another 5 hours.
Oh yeah.
We've got your studio open, eating pizza.
But we're geeks, Pete. This is what we do. But
living the high life. So,
yeah. So we didn't get you round to actually answering the question. So yeah, good avoiding the question. So apart from being the best man at Matt Brailsford's wedding, what is the biggest achievement in life after that?
Oh well, you'll feel this soon. I'm a dad, and I became a dad 3 days before I did my first UK festival presentation on mobile, and felt bad about that. But I said, go, good, off you go. So I did get the pass out for that one. Yeah, I'm a dad. It doesn't get much better than that. So
yeah, fantastic.
Worked long and hard to get him. He's fantastic. Every minute I put into him, I see it come back, and it's great. He's at cuddling stage now. So by far, that's me. I'm a big family man now.
Excellent, fantastic. Good stuff. So Tim Payne asks, what lessons have you learnt from Cutting Edge Nice that you've applied to kind of your main business, Off-Road Code?
Ooh, be nice.
Be nice. What? Just in general? Just be nice to people, or?
Yeah, we don't follow the competition too much. So some of the other knife sites will do a certain thing, we won't do it, and we see some of our clientele, our actual website clients, will do complete opposite. They'll just constantly chase the competition
and go, look, they're doing this, they're doing X, Y, Z. We need it now.
And I had a client the other day actually who demanded something. Said, well, I have to have this because these other sites have got it, and I explained it. Just because another site has it doesn't necessarily mean it's a good thing. The example I gave, Olympic holidays, when we put a search box, standard site-wide search box at the top. Left it empty because guidelines at the time said if you put a hint in there, then it sort of limits people's minds as to what they type in the box. If it's a free box, then in theory, they should type in whatever's on their mind or whatever they're looking for, and your search should then find it. Now our search is Google search under the hood. We pay for the Google search thing, 100 quid or whatever it was. So basically, if you can type in Google and get results back, guess what? That's exactly the same thing. So I was all for that. Anyway, the client went to go see one of their travel agents, and somewhere it bubbled up that the travel agent didn't know you could put a hotel code into that box and get linked directly to the hotel. So they said, well, we have to put in that box exactly what you can and can't search for some hints. So this wonderful clear box became search for hotel, region, resort, hotel ID, or
So it kind of got polluted pretty quickly then.
So we ended up with a search box. It was this long. It just said search. It became this long. This humongous hint in it. And I thought it was crazy. I kind of fought against it a little bit. But anyway, client went out. We put it in. The very next day, Thomas Cook, I think he was, or Thompson, one of the two, did exactly the same to their search box. I thought that's kind of madness. But the logic was, we think, we don't know. This is the point. So we don't know how they're thinking. But they saw it and they went, oh, they must have done some analytics or some testing. They must have a user experience guru in, and maybe they're doing it, so we have to do it too. So that they started copying something that we did, and we started calling it client inbreeding, where instead of
just a massive circle that just goes around.
You think, well, they're doing it, we must do it, and it's not actually true, and it can be quite poisonous, really. Joel Spolsky, who I'm a big fan of, he wrote a post once where he said, I don't give two hoots about what the competition is doing. I'm just concentrating on producing the best thing I can. I don't look at the competition, I don't care about their press releases, I don't care what they're doing. I don't know how much of that is necessarily true. I'm sure you bend an ear to it once in a while. I certainly have looked at it once in a while. But I don't just blindly follow it. I actually think long and hard about where they use stuff. So for our business, we do the same thing. We're not massively salesy. We're not massively in your face. Our SEO is awful. But the thing I always try and get across in my talks is, people do business with people at the end of the day, and your hardest thing is to get in front of people and go meet those people. I could do it through blogs, I could do it through SEO, but it doesn't differentiate me from anyone else, because at the end of the day, people seem to like doing business with us. And so we did the same with Cat Edge Knives. We wrote all our own copy, we did all our own images and our own designs. So it wasn't like anyone else. It was on purpose. We didn't do all the things. There's a knife we got sent recently that starts to quote about. It's antibacterial. It's got copper in the blade, and it's samurais do it. We don't really do any of that stuff. It's been done to death. It doesn't get any further up the ladder. And by not doing it, we actually jump up quite a few notches. So that's kind of the same logic we try and do in our business.
No, fantastic. So we've got one from Anthony Dang. He's asked, I tried to use USite Builder strongly typed models with XSLT. Why isn't it working?
Can you not tell trolling when you see it?
Yeah, I think... do you want to give him a response? Do you just want to tell him to F off?
XSLT isn't the problem there. It's USite Builder. That's, you did actually have a proof of concept of ages ago where you could pass in
a model to XSLT?
A C# class, which you could then use as your model inside XSLT.
Wow.
It worked pretty well.
Did it? Did it actually work?
Yeah, but whenever I do any of my XSLT stuff, I always ask, could Grey State use it? And
I was gonna say, if Christian can't use it, then
so yeah, he'd need Visual Studio in order to get that work. So I thought, well, I'm not going to do it.
Pointless. Okay, fantastic. I think we've got one more before we kind of wrap up. So Dan Lister asks, what was your favourite session, and what subject session do you think could have been useful at CodeGarden 14? So I think that's two. So I think let's take the first part. What was your favourite session?
I didn't see that many sessions, sadly. Doing two presentations in 2 days takes quite a lot of brain power, because you're constantly loading up your head with your script, the way I do it anyway. I don't read the script, but you
have ideas bouncing around, yeah.
And so I was a little bit busy wandering around, making sure, and if I'm honest, polishing some of my slides and making sure a few bits were okay with that. And the two I really wanted to see were on at the same time I was talking, which is another kick in the teeth. But the one I did see that I really enjoyed, and for me was the talk of CodeGarden, was Chris Gaskell's varnish caching.
Oh, well, like the performance caching talk he done.
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic, and it's a great talk for lots of reasons. One is I thought the content was really fantastic. I loved it. It showed one of the problems with what we do is he's done something in there that was actually really clever and very, I'll call it cutting edge. He won't think so, but he doesn't think so because he's done it. He's been paid for it, and he's looking at Varnish for weeks. La la la. It becomes the norm, and so it's not worth talking about. When in fact, when he was doing it, lots of people were in the audience going, "Wow, that's ace! Look at the numbers on that. It's fantastic." And it didn't look that complicated. You know, when he showed you what was required, it's not complicated because he's worked out all the pitfalls for you. Right? Don't do this, do this. You put this bit in there. That bit's required. And once he got all that bit sorted out, then it was good. And you could tell he put some time into his slides. I'm dreadful for doing my slides. I don't have any humorous images. I don't get any illustrations done or anything like that. He'd gone to the bother of having nice illustrations which show some bits. And for a guy I know isn't overly comfortable with doing public speaking, I thought he did a great job. And even now, when I tell him he did a great job, he says, "I don't believe you." But I'm doing he did a great job, and that was a great talk, and with good content, which it's a double.
Yeah, no, which is fantastic. I know that we're kind of slowly running out of time, but maybe we can touch on it quickly. That you wanted to kind of skim over how that maybe we could all, as speakers, improve in terms of maybe going away from doing kind of live code demos potentially, and just getting the material across. Is that something that you had a view about, or some opinions?
Got lots of opinions.
I know you've got lots of opinions. You've only got an hour.
I know. Well, we didn't start at 1:15. We're all right. We as a community, we seem to have got it a bit wrong as to what is required in a code in when someone presents. Yep. Presenting isn't corporate training. It should never be considered corporate training. Presenting at conferences and stuff is about opening people's minds, giving them some ideas, giving them little threads that they can then go pick up and follow later to think about, chew over, even if it's just discussing in a pub later or whatever. But it can do something. Now, and when you're doing a presentation, you can see it. You can see light bulbs going in people's heads if you've done it right, because they do that funny look trying to do it to camera. When they listen to it, they go, and then they'll go,
"Oh yeah."
Right? If I see one of those when I'm giving a talk, internally I give myself a high five, because that's one guy who I've pushed a button that wasn't pushed before, and he suddenly made a connection. And he's going, that could fix for that problem I've got when I get back to the office. I can't wait. I'm going to have a go at blah.
Yeah.
Right? And that's what presenting really is about giving people fresh fodder to feed their brains to get them going on things. Because that's how problems get solved. Now, what we have done of late, the last couple of years, is it's all been pushed about, well, you've seen it, the talk goes something like this. So I'm going to show you about this, and then we're going to do this. Anyway, enough talk. Let's get to the code, right? And then they boot up Visual Studio. And then the talk is loosely based around them doing typos, trying to compile, not compiling, and then go, oh, wait a minute, I've made a problem. Someone from the audience heckling, saying, you've missed a comma, there's a semicolon, you need to type the thing, right? And he can't hear, so he's going, what? And so the people listening at home on the video later, all they hear is a guy going, what, which is awful. And then he compiles, which, if it's a big project, can take a while. And then he's got to reload it, and he's pulling some things down from the internet because he forgot that it's not internet-y friendly.
Yep.
Just minutes of your life disappearing. And as soon as it happens, you just watch everyone in the audience glaze. Everyone turns to the mate and goes, here we go. We're looking forward to this one. Oh, well. You get YSODs, and they happen to just about all the presentations at CodeGarden. Some are simple and understandable. Things like, I just need to tickle the cache. Or they do the thing where they go, anyway, you don't want to watch me type all this, so I'm just going to cut and paste in hundreds of lines of code and just assume it works. And so, well, which bit, I know the boilerplate, but which is the bit you're specifically showing me that does the magic that you're talking about? And all that gets lost in live demos. And it's something that we seem that we have to do, like a badge on it. If you don't do live demos, then you ain't got it. You're boring people because they want to see the code. It's total bullshit. It shouldn't be that way at all. And so one of the things I would like to get across to anyone who does present is don't do them. There's very few people in the world who are very good at it. I'm told I'm a good speaker. I don't do live code demos.
Yeah.
They're just setting you up for yourself for a massive fall, and it switches off the audience quicker than, I don't know, Tomazepam. It's just not going to work. So the sooner people get in their heads that, you know what, showing a snapshot or a screenshot of a bit of code that does what you do. When they did the USAT Builder talk, for instance, I could have done an entire talk behind my computer showing people how I did it from scratch.
Yeah.
It's just boring. So instead, I popped open a class and I said, okay, here's the attributes that you put on. This is the kind of thing. You can see what it's going to do. It's very simple, and you just have to trust me that if I did, build,
this is going to work. Yeah.
It's going to work, right? So just assume that worked, and then look. Guess what? If I went on the website, rather than having to go, here it is before, I just make this change, now I go back and I reload and we wait, just wait for the actual to boot up. There, you can see the dates there. I couldn't give two.
Yeah.
You could have told me that and give me another minute's worth of inspirational, fantastic talk. So that's one of the things I rile against. We need to stop doing it. Some do it really, really well. Matt was the first to do it, I think, in the community, but as a community member, when he did Not Commerce live in 45 minutes and hacked that into the back end, which was outstanding. But I know he practiced it several times. He's a very good coder at doing what he did. He worked out all the things, and he had a little cheat sheet next to him, and off he went. But it's not necessarily all that great to watch. Matt's was, because it was the first time it had been done, and we were excited to do it.
Mm-hmm.
But everyone tries it, and they try and use it as a crutch to hide, because they like hiding behind the laptop rather than be stuck to the phone and actually presenting.
Yep.
Hide behind the laptop is really comfortable. And Visual Studio, to be honest, it doesn't look good on a projector.
Not particularly.
Pixels. And
Not really.
That. The code window's like this big, and even when you zoom in, you only fit 4 words on it, and it's just not the best medium to be doing that sort of stuff. I'd much rather have a GitHub URL and some screenshots of the chunky. Give me the good stuff. Maybe like a trailer. It's not meant to be the full movie.
Give me the highlights.
Yeah, and now I'm talking to the director and he's explaining why we did what and what we did. That's the important. So that's one of my biggest grumbles. And the other one, my top tip, if I have to give one presenting, is do show and tell when you're doing your slides. So if anyone watches me, I have bullet points in all my slides. I'll only show you one bullet point at a time. I don't show you all the bullet points. Because as soon as you show a full slide of text,
everyone's just read them.
No one's listening to you for the next minute. They're all just reading everything. You can't help it. So if you show them one thing and then talk about that one thing, you have their full attention. So if there was 2 tips I could give, don't do code demos and do reveal one bullet point at a time rather than just huge chunks of text. There you go.
No, that's fantastic advice, and like you said, it's kudos to before we started. It's kudos to anyone who actually gets up and does a talk in the first place, because some people are maybe not so comfortable talking in front of people. So kudos to anyone who actually does get up and does the talk anyway. But like you say, there is probably better ways that we can probably get our message or points across than just coding for 45 minutes and this is the code and oh yes, if we do this, and like you say, it becomes quite dull pretty quick.
I'm like you say, I'm not knocking anyone who has the gumption to get up there, but it doesn't take much to get up there. Everyone thinks it takes loads to get up there, but it doesn't. Anyone who gets up there is fantastic. If you get up there, then make the best of the moment is what I'm trying to say for both you and the audience.
Mm-hmm.
If you're given a privileged position to actually stand up in front of people and say, I'm going to tell you about something, all I ask is that you do a few really simple things which make that time well spent for both you and them.
Yeah.
Those 2 tips that I gave would make a world of difference to what we do. There's times where coding demos are great. Keynote, Niels, by the way, did a fantastic job in the keynote because he nailed the Umbraco Service demo.
That's the first time ever, though, isn't it?
Well, this is it. He gave me a shout out purely because I've seen that about 7 times. 7 different stages he's shown me the Umbraco Service at various talks, and each time something has gone wrong because the
internet's fallen over or something's broken or
he's forgotten a semicolon. He's not. There's a merge conflict, whatever it is, right? All legitimate stuff. It's just like stuff that is going to happen when you develop anyway. I think the worst one I saw is when he accidentally went to the dev version of Umbraco Service, not the live-facing one that you meant to go to. And so none of his stuff was actually set up right or something. So it just like failed epically. Anyway, pulled it back. But the danger with it is when you presented something that big is, lots of people are going to judge it by first impressions. And if you then mess that up, you're damaging a lot of impressions. It's very difficult to get back that goodwill that you've burnt when there's problems. You have it on a website build, for instance, if a client clicks a button and they get a screen of death. then they start instantly questioning the CMS is all broken, this whole investment ruined. When in fact, it's just simple. Oh yeah, hang on.
I missed a semicolon or anything.
So to us, it's like a 30-second fix, but to the client, it can take weeks to get rid of that feeling.
Confidence,
This thing's groping. And so I told him, please video it and then talk over it. Don't do it live. And I can't tell you what he actually said, but I'll paraphrase it. Only losers video or something, and heroes live code. And so I went, oh, okay, that's bold as brass. I like that.
Yeah, of course.
But equally, if that's the case, make sure it works. And so the keynote this year he did, which I think is why he gave me a shout out, which is good.
Fantastic. Excellent. I think we've run out of time, unfortunately, but it's been fantastic talking to you, Pete. And I think we've got a few gripes and we've learnt a few tips and things along the way. So I think we can all be better talkers, and we've learnt about code first, code last, and a few other things along the way. So it's been fantastic to chat to you, Pete.
Thank you, mate. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for letting me bore everyone. Friday and a good weekend, and keep up the good work. This show is great. I tune in every week. So
excellent. Thank you very much, Pete. Catch you later. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.